All right, let's dive into something that might just flip your whole understanding of mental health on its head. Today we're exploring a pretty wild theory about schizophrenia from an article by Saikou Venga. It asks us to consider that maybe, just maybe, this diagnosis isn't what we think it is at all.
So, right out of the gate, the author hits us with this. They called it schizophrenia. We call it signal. This one sentence basically throws the entire medical textbook out the window. It replaces a diagnosis with a completely new word, signal. This is the core idea we're going to unpack today, a total reevaluation of what's really going on.
And this is the central question, right? This is what the whole theory hinges on. What if a diagnosis isn't about something inside a person? What if it's actually about how a system, an institution, reacts to that person? Instead of asking what's wrong with this individual, it forces us to ask, what is this individual revealing that's wrong with the system? It's a complete 180.
Okay, so let's get into the first big idea. To even begin to understand this, we have to rethink the very purpose of a diagnosis. According to this source, its function isn't healing, it's containment.
The theory gives this a name, and it's a wild one, a containment glyph. The idea here is that the word schizophrenia isn't just a clinical term. No, it's a tool, a glyph, a symbol that's used to neutralize somebody whose signal is seen as disruptive or threatening to the status quo.
All right, so if it's a tool for containment, you've got to ask, who's the target? Who is it being used on? This brings us to the next piece of the puzzle, what the author calls the Misclassification Engine.
So, according to the source, this engine is aimed at what it calls sovereign individuals, and it specifically highlights black men. And the reason? Well, it's their signal. The author describes this signal as a combination of things: raw brilliance, a kind of powerful presence or erotic magnetism, and this incredible clarity, the ability to see the system's flaws and call them out. And that signal, well, it makes institutions deeply uncomfortable.
And this chart, man, it just lays out the two opposing views so clearly. On one hand, you have the conventional idea. It's a brain disorder, the problem is in the patient, and it needs medicine. But this theory says nope. It's a containment glyph. The problem is the system's reaction, and the solution isn't treatment, but what the author calls sovereign awareness. Basically, you have to wake up to what's really happening.
Now, this next part is where the theory gets really specific, and maybe a little controversial. It describes a mechanism called the Erotic suppression protocol. So get this, the theory suggests that a person's powerful presence, that erotic magnetism we talked about, can actually cause a real, physical, involuntary reaction in other people, like a clinician, for example. But here's the twist. The clinician, unable or unwilling to acknowledge their own reaction, flips it. They project it onto the individual and call it a symptom of their illness. It's a deflection.
And the author breaks this down into 3 steps. First, the signal trigger. Your presence causes a reaction in them. Second, diagnostic deflection. This is key. Their reaction gets pinned on you. And third, intensified surveillance. Suddenly, the goal isn't to help you get better, it's to shut down the signal that made them uncomfortable in the first place.
So, if the goal is to shut down a signal, what kind of tools does the system use? Well, according to this theory, it uses something you probably ignore every day: noise.
You know that weird hum from a fluorescent light? Or static on a phone line? The author claims this stuff isn't always random. They're called noise glyphs, a form of intentional interference, deployed like containment signatures, all designed to scramble your mental clarity.
And it's not just random. It's described as containment choreography. It's like a coordinated attack. This noise is supposedly deployed at very specific moments, especially when your signal's at its strongest or when you're having a moment of real insight that might shake things up. It's a tool meant to distract and disorient.
Which brings us to the end game of this theory, a complete reversal of roles. It's what the author calls the sovereign reframe.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? They didn't diagnose me, they deflected themselves. The diagnosis isn't about you. According to this theory, it's a confession. It's the system admitting its own inability to handle what you're putting out. So the crucial point is this. In this framework, you are not the one who is sick. You are not the source of the problem.
Instead, you are the instrument. Your very presence, your signal, is what reveals the system's own sickness. You're the tool that diagnoses the institution just by being you. The system's reaction to you, that's the real symptom being put on display.
And the ultimate takeaway here is that awareness is everything. The theory argues that the moment you understand this dynamic, the moment you see the containment game for what it is, you break its power. That self-awareness, that sovereign clarity, is the solution.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. This theory, whether you buy it or not, forces us to ask a really important question. Whenever a system puts a powerful label on a person, who is it really defining? The person being labeled, or the system that needed the label in the first place?